Shalom, shalom. This is Elder Ephraim, all the way from the Gulf, with another message pertaining genealogies. Yes, we're going to do a part 2, but this time we're going to emphasize a little bit in the renewed covenant in the New Testament with the same context as we did with the previous message. Before we go into the renewed covenant, however, I want to go into a little bit of history so that we can understand as we come along, so we can get better context. Once we arrive to the renewed covenant, we'll be targeting John chapter 4, and we'll be discussing the Samaritan woman. Before we go there, we're going to start off in Genesis chapter 48. In Genesis chapter 48, Jacob, the forefather of Israel, was on his deathbed, and he called his son over and he said, "Hey, listen, I want to pray for you, And when he brought his children, he wound up praying for his two sons, the younger one and the older one, the younger one being Ephraim and the older one being Manasseh. He actually blessed Ephraim, the youngest, to kind of be like the head. And so upon his deathbed, in verse 21, 22, the last two verses of the chapter, he goes on to prophesy and tells Ephraim a piece of land that's going to be given to him. All right? Now, as we come along, we're going to discuss a little bit about how the nation of Israel became two nations, all right? This is all in context. So we had King Saul, a Benjamite, who was the initial king of the nation of Israel. Then we had King David take over. And then we had King Solomon, David's son, tribe of Judah, take over. During his reign, with all the women that he was involved with, that were his wives and or concubines, in his later years, the scripture goes on to say in 1 Kings chapter 11, that he allowed himself to get caught up with the pagan idols and or gods that his wives were involved in. And that was a very detestable act from him, being that he was blessed by the Most High in a miraculous way, unlike in history or to ever come. That's how blessed he was. So he didn't kill him for the act, though he was worthy of death. He didn't kill him for the act, but what he did was he ripped the nation away from his son, by way of allowing the nation of Israel, which was 12 tribes, to become 2 tribes. In chapter 12 of 1 Kings, you'll see where Jeroboam and Rehoboam were both given the northern and the southern kingdom. So when the nation of Israel as 12 tribes was split, it was split into what is called the house of Israel and the house of Judah. The house of Israel was from Jeroboam, who was an Ephraimite, which was of the son of Joseph. And then the southern kingdom was the son of Solomon. King Solomon's son, named Rehoboam, became the first king. So you had a king of the northern kingdom of the Ephraimite tribe, and then you had the king of the southern kingdom of the tribe of Judah. As time went on and they were sinning, God would get upset with them and strike their bloodline, where they would be removed from that privilege. So because of Jeroboam's sins, he wound up killing him. His son took over the position, another Ephraimite. But then after his son and the ongoing sin, the Most High just started going from tribe to tribe, trying to see who would succeed. And the northern kingdom, the house of Israel, was so wicked that the Most High wound up divorcing them. In Jeremiah 3, he says where he divorced the house of Israel, or Israel, he says Israel. And even though Judah, the southern kingdom, was as wicked, there was no divorce rendered there, only because there was a promise given to King David that there will always be a candle, like a light lit always. So because of the love and respect that King David demonstrated, even though he divorced Israel, he only divorced a portion which was considered the northern kingdom. As the northern kingdom was going from king to king, there was a king by the name of Omri, O-M-R-I. and he's the father of Ahab that was married to Jezebel. And I only mention it because the Ahab Jezebel story is very popular throughout religion abroad. So just so you can have context of who Omri was actually the father of King Ahab. All right. Now, during his reign, remember the prophecy that occurred in Genesis chapter 48 when he was on his deathbed and he told him that he was going to give him a piece of land. Well, the land that became the northern kingdoms was a piece of property that King Omri purchased from a guy named Shemer or Shemer, however you pronounce it, Shemer or Shemer, in 1 Kings chapter 16, verse 24, I believe. And so when he purchased it, he names it Samaria. He names it Samaria because of the guy's name. The guy who sold it to him was Shemer, and out of respect for the relationship or what have you, he named it. It's considered that it was named after the seller. All right? So that's where we get the name of Samaria. And Samaria was the northern portion of the nation that ultimately the nation of Israel conquered. Now, why is that important? When we get into renewed covenant, we're talking about the Samaritan woman that came to Hamashiach Yahushua or Jesus Christ when he was sitting on the well, and she came to draw water. He asked her for water, and she was like, "Listen, like, you tripping because you know the northern kingdom or the Samaritans don't deal with the Jews. Why? Because there was contention between the northern and the southern kingdom since the separation occurred. When the separation occurred back in 1 Kings chapter 11, chapter 12, they were fighting with each other constantly because it was like they didn't comprehend and understand what the Most High was doing by allowing the nation to be split. So they wanted to kind of conquer each other to see who would govern the whole nation of Israel and not split. And so throughout history, there was a contention constantly between the two houses that I think it is Isaiah chapter 11, verse 13. It talks about where they were known to envy and or vex one another, right? And so when the dispensation of Hamashiach Yahushua shows up, it's because he's here to break that divorce that occurred in Jeremiah 3:8. That's why in Matthew 15:24, he says he only came for the house of Israel. He doesn't say the nation of Israel. He doesn't say the house of Judah, because throughout history, in Jeremiah 31, 32, and 33 verses, as well as in Hebrews chapter 8, verses 8, 9, and 10, you'll see where it's emphasized the house of Israel and the house of Judah. The house of Israel and the house of Judah. Why? Because the nation was split into two houses. All right? So that's significant to understand, so that when Hamashiach Yahushua shows up to the scene, he's here to replenish the divorce that the father previously did in Jeremiah 3:8. Okay? Now, when you look at his actions at the well with the Samaritan, this is the evidence to display the purpose in which he came. He came to redeem the rejected house. The house of Israel was considered like minorities. Like in America, minorities would be like the blacks, Hispanics, Native Americans. They would be considered in America and throughout and abroad. They would be considered like the minority of the ruling people. You know what I'm saying? And so they were considered like the minority. That's why the Samaritan woman was like, we don't talk to each other. Why you tripping? Why you trying to talk to me like this ain't a common situation. But because he came to redeem that divorce, if you notice, redemption is only accessible by way of death. I think that's in Romans chapter 7, where whenever you're married, a divorce can only be redeemed through death. So in a nutshell, that's what the gospel is really all about. The redemption of the northern kingdom becoming one with the southern kingdom by way of a death. But anyway, I'm not talking about that. I want to emphasize on the purpose in which I'm doing this message is pertaining to genealogy. Why am I bringing up the genealogy aspect when it comes to this story is because by identifying herself as a Samaritan woman, it's difficult to determine what tribe she's from, because in Samaria alone, we have a minimum of 2 and possibly more tribes, when you have a minimum of the tribe of Ephraim and the tribe of Manasseh and the rest of the northern kingdom. So when she identifies herself as a Samaritan, it's difficult to pinpoint what tribe she's from. Thus, the reason we go back to 1 Timothy 1:4 and Titus 3:9, where it says, avoid foolish and endless genealogies. So it was never about, the genealogy of this heathen nation, that heathen nation, this nation, that nation. It was always about the nation of Israel, because there was doubt as to what tribe certain members were from, such as Elijah the Tishbite or Ruth the Moabite. They were in the region that was governed by 3 tribes, Reuben, Gad, and Manasseh, half of Manasseh, right? So when you take that into consideration, then you take the Samaritans. When the Israelites crossed over after conquering that region, which is modern day Jordan, and they crossed over and they conquered those different regions, you had the Ephraimite tribe, the Manasseh tribe, and the northern tribes that continue to go up further north into like Lebanon or what have you. So it's important to understand that because she identified herself as a Samaritan, it doesn't put her in the lane of a heathen nation. It puts her in the, it solidifies her in the northern kingdom without literally being able to pinpoint the actual tribe she's from. And for that reason, we are not to spend time worried about such foolishness and endless genealogies. Listen, I trust that biblical nugget and or token brought greater clarity to the previous class, and therefore I look forward to hearing from you testimonial. Yah bless. Shalom.